The frozen frontier has left us with a lot of questions. Nothing seems to be adding up. Follow me down the rabbit hole about Antarctica. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the rabbit hole. I'm your host, Danny, and today we are talking about Antarctica, but this is going to be one of a two-part series because I can't fit it all into this episode. There's so much about Antarctica that I have to get out for you guys. So you will get one part this week, and then the next part, part two, will be next week, and we will finish everything up. So if you feel like today you have questions after this episode, don't worry, come back next week and I'm sure I will answer all of your questions, I promise. But before I get started, this episode has been requested by so many people. So thank you, Sean, DJ, and my husband. And actually, while I was researching this just the other day, I got a request for this episode as well. So thank you, Dan, as well, for the suggestion. So lots of suggestions for this episode because there's a lot that's going on in Antarctica. So let's get started. So Antarctica is Earth's southernmost continent, and it is also the least populated. So with only about 1,000 to 5,000 people there seasonally, because you have researchers and all the people that work down at the South Pole. It is surrounded by the Southern or Antarctic Ocean and contains the South Pole. And it is mostly covered by the Antarctic ice sheet with an average thickness of 1.2 miles, thick of ice. And it's been covered for a long time. On December 1st of 1959, the Antarctic Treaty was signed in Washington, D.C. by 12 countries that came together basically to agree to do very similar things on that continent. So these countries, the first 12, included Argentina, Australia, Belgium, Chile, France, Japan, New Zealand, Norway, the United Kingdom, Russian Federation, because right at the time, I don't know if it was Russia or USSR or what was going on there in Russia. You know how they are. And us, the United States. And these countries either had scientists currently working or had been working recently in and around Antarctica and had a serious investment into the science in Antarctica. The treaty stated, just a few things that the treaty stated was that Antarctica shall be used for peaceful purposes only, so no war, freedom of scientific investigation in Antarctica, and cooperation toward that end shall continue. Scientific observations and results from Antarctica shall be exchanged and made freely available, and all areas of Antarctica, including all stations, installations, and equipment within those areas, shall be open at all times to inspection. I'm assuming from other countries, so if I don't know how it all works down in Antarctica. To me, it seems like they just have one station, everybody kind of works there, but if the U.S. has a certain little area, it has to be open for the Russians to come in and investigate. We will get into this a little bit later because on the Sean Ryan show, I've actually referred to this podcast a couple times. So on his show, he had a man named Eric Hecker. And in fact, I've referenced this episode before because we talked about it in the intrusive thought devices episode. His main the most of that episode was actually about Antarctica, not about the intrusive thought devices. So if you listen to that, then you already know what I'm going to bring up in next week's episode. I didn't even get to it in this week's episode, but there are maybe potentially some people, he's a whistleblower, so some people that are, the U.S. specifically, trying to use Antarctica for war purposes, which violates the first little thing in the treaty that says Antarctica shall be used for peaceful purposes only. Again, we're going to get to that next week. We don't have time this week. But since the original treaty was signed by the original 12, 44 other countries have agreed to the treaty and participated under its governance. So the treaty states that countries can participate in the consultative meeting as long as they are showing their interest in Antarctica by conducting substantial research. And it specifically says substantial research. There are now 29 consultative parties in Antarctica, and then the others, the 27 countries, they're non-consultative parties, so they are invited to the meetings but do not participate in the decision-making process. So they can just come and like listen in, but they can't actually help make any of the decisions that go along with what everybody else is voting on for Antarctica. So that's kind of what's going on. There's theories out the wazoo about Antarctica. So I just dove in head first, and luckily all my theories, like, I don't know how I did it. They all just ended up being like in line with each other and needed to be one after another, and it worked out. So let's just do it. Let's just go into it. There are several theories about this frozen wonderland, so I'm gonna try to hit all of them. If I miss one that you've been like looking for, please send me a message and I will cover it. We'll do a part 3. I don't even care. So some of these theories, they do kind of contradict each other. Some of them do, but some of them don't. They all go together potentially. So it just depends on how you look at it. My job is to simply give you guys the theories. Your job is to decide like which ones you believe, if you believe all of them, if you don't believe any of them. That's my job with all of these episodes, or like my goal with all these episodes is to just give you the theory. Whether you believe it or not, that's totally up to you. I'm just here giving you the information. So the first theory I dove into was that Hitler had a secret base in Antarctica. So between 1938 and 1939, there was a German expedition to Antarctica, and this was just before the Second World War. So World War II hadn't really started yet. And at the time, now we know that Hitler was like super into like hidden relics that were said to have powers. And he actually spent a good deal of his money, or Germany's money, looking all over the world for these hidden relics. So he thought that maybe there was something in Antarctica. So the MS Schwabenland, I'm saying that wrong. It was their ship, a German freighter, went on one of these secret missions to Antarctica. There's 33-member crew aboard that had like military experts, scientists, and construction crews, because you just never know what you're going to come across. And they also had some key members from the Thule Society, which I'm going to have to do an entire episode on the Thule Society because like I never heard of them before now. Maybe I'm just living under a rock. So this was a group of elites that were associated with the Nazis that focused on mysticism and the occult. And they were like so into it, which I think is kind of why Hitler was super into it. Maybe, I don't know how it all works. But like I said, I'm going to do a whole episode on the Thule Society because I'm like super into that now. They went to Antarctica looking for extraterrestrials or people from the center of the world, which both of those theories we'll get into, but we're not there yet. The Thule Society believed that these people were mystics or channels who could communicate with, like, there was communication happening, basically. So they were the ones that pointed Hitler to Antarctica. They were like, yep, we need to go there. That there might be ancient civilizations there or bases where they could find advanced technologies that they were looking for. And while in Antarctica, Nazis were said to have mapped a great deal of the continent by air. That's how they found these like highly advanced cities, but the cities weren't just on the surface, they went deep under the ice, which is not the first time you're going to hear that. And that's when they started like relocating a massive amount of equipment and personnel to Antarctica, trying to get these ancient facilities like back up and running. They established a huge underground bunker there called Base 211. And so some people believe, so there's this is a double-edged sword, because I did a whole episode on Hitler escaping to Argentina after World War II instead of like dying. And some people believe that he actually went to Antarctica instead. So it just depends on like which theory you kind of believe about Hitler. Did he go to his base in Antarctica, or did he go to Argentina? Did he just die? I don't know, but that's up to you. That's not up to me. So This theory does get a little bit more traction, like having a base in Antarctica, when you hear that the Russians have found a Nazi base in the Arctic Circle. So this Arctic Circle base is located on the island of Alexandria Land, about 1,000 kilometers from the North Pole. And if they have a base at the North Pole, then why wouldn't they have one at the South Pole, especially if they're looking for these mystic relics? If he's looking for something, he's going to keep looking for it. There's all kinds of things that are going on or potentially going on down at the South Pole. So why would they not be conducting crazy experiments down there? Maybe they were the first people to be conducting crazy experiments down there. Who knows? But the question is, why did the Nazis believe that there were things, what led them to Antarctica? You know what I'm saying? At what point were they like, yep, we need to go to Antarctica because something is there? Well, that brings us to our next theory, because Antarctica is actually found on a map. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Yeah, no shit. It's found on lots of maps. I know that. I know. But I'm saying it was found on a map before it was discovered. It's on a map 300 years before anybody ever knew that it existed. Yep. You're hearing me correctly. So in 1513, the Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis created a map of the world. And this map is the oldest known Turkish atlas showing the New World and one of the oldest maps of America. Only about a third of the map has survived, and it shows the western coast of Africa and the eastern coast of South America. But it's surprisingly accurate. But when the western coast of Africa goes all the way down and the eastern coast of South America goes all the way down, underneath those is a landmass of Antarctica. But that's the thing. We hadn't discovered Antarctica in 1513. Nobody had been there. We didn't know it was there. It gets weirder. Piri stated that he used Arab sources, Indian maps he got from Portugal, and Christopher Columbus's maps of the Americas. And in the map's legends, it states that the map was based on about 20 charts in medieval European maps of the world. So basically, he took maps from everywhere that he could gather them and created this map. He didn't actually go and map the world. He just created a map from everybody else's maps. Super common. It just happened to be ridiculously accurate. This map, the Piri Reis map, was discovered in 1929 by a German theologian who was commissioned by the Turkish to catalog the Topkapi Palace Library's non-Islamic items. That was a lot. And it caused quite the uproar when discovered because it was the only 16th century map that showed South America in its proper longitudinal position to Africa. And at the time, geographers had spent centuries looking for the lost map of Columbus. Basically, they were looking for all these maps that Christopher Columbus was said to have created, and then they couldn't find any. So this map was the first map they had found that was a copy of one of Columbus's maps. So it was the only known copy at the time in the entire world. I'm assuming because it says at the time, and I didn't look into this. But I'm assuming that since then they have discovered either more copies or his actual maps. But again, I didn't look into it. I could have, I just chose not to. There's already so much going on in this episode.
Did you know that over 40% of Americans have a hard time swallowing pills? So when it's time to take your vitamins, large capsules and pills are out of the question. We know that gummy vitamins exist, but they're full of sugar, they get stuck in your teeth, and they only contain a fraction of the nutrients you need. Luckily, Easy Melts has discovered the ultimate vitamin sweet spot. Vitamins that melt in your mouth, taste like a treat, and are packed with nutrients ready for absorption, all without an ounce of sugar. For a limited time, Easy Melts is giving listeners a free 3-month supply of vitamin D3 with their first purchase. To claim your free D3 vitamins, visit try.easymelts.com/spring24. That's try. The letter E, the letter Z, melts, winona.com/spring24. Say goodbye to the old way of taking your vitamins and say hello to the easy way. Menopausal and perimenopausal women, listen up. It's time to take control of your health and comfort, and Winona is here to help. Winona is a telemedicine company for menopause care who believes that your symptoms are real, important, and deserve to be taken seriously. And for many women, this starts with hormone replacement therapy. Winona's HRT is made with plant-based, bioidentical hormones rather than synthetic ones, so it better aligns with your body to offer relief from hot flashes, weight gain, and other uncomfortable symptoms. 80% of women who use Winona find relief within just 90 days. So, what are you waiting for? Get started today. Visit buywinona.com today to start your free visit. With free shipping and the ability to pause or cancel at any time, your path to wellness has zero obligations. Use code SPRING24 at buywinona.com for 25% off your first treatment plan. That's BYWINONA.com for 25% off. Winona, menopause care made easy.
On top of this, the map depicts land masses that had yet to be explored. Like I said earlier, Antarctica hadn't even been discovered yet. But that's not the strangest part. I think the strangest part is that it shows the coast of Antarctica as it exists under the ice cover. So that suggests that it wasn't covered in ice when he made the map, or when he got whoever made the map that he copied from. It wasn't I don't know how old that map was, but Antarctica wasn't covered in ice. And like I said before, Antarctica wouldn't be discovered for another 300 years after this map was created. And geological evidence shows that Antarctica hasn't been ice-free for 6,000 years. 6,000 years! So now we have to start asking some questions. Because, what is actually going on? So we know that Peary used, mini charts to map the world, so he might not have known that Antarctica was supposed to be covered in ice, or, most likely not. I don't think that he was an explorer. He was an admiral, but nobody had gone to Antarctica. Nobody knew that it was covered in ice. But, where did he get a map of an uniced Antarctica? The last time it was not covered in ice, humans weren't even on Earth yet. Was there some unknown civilization that either lived in Antarctica or had the technology to map it and needed to map it for some reason? This actually, I started asking a lot of questions, because where did he, how old were the maps that he was taking to make his map off of? Because some of them were not that old. Christopher Columbus's maps were not that old. And if he's making almost perfect replicas of what our actual map is right now, he did say he took medieval European maps, but again, nobody had a map of Antarctica. Where did he get that? Why is it on the Peary-Reese map? But this actually brings us to another theory. Like I said, these theories kind of all led into each other. It really worked out for me. Because every time I had a bunch of questions, it took me down a new rabbit hole. It was really, this episode was really fun to research. So this takes us down the rabbit hole about Atlantis being in Antarctica. Because Plato learned from the Egyptians that there was once a civilization called Atlantis. And they claim that it existed 9,000 years before their time. So a long time before we would have been on the Earth. You've got Atlantis, but it's actually in Antarctica. So hear me out here. Just go with me here on this. This civilization was before the Great Flood that is talked about in almost every society. So I'm not making this up. In the book of Genesis, it talks about a flood, Noah's Ark. You have the Epic of Gilgamesh, and the Mesopotamians speak of this. The Egyptians talk about a flood. Almost every single culture, any type of religion, the Buddhism talks about this. Hinduism talks about this. A great flood happened, and there's evidence of a great flood happening on Earth. This isn't made up. It's potentially made up if that's what you believe, but there's evidence that there was a great flood. And this great flood rid the earth of a bunch of things. Ancient civilizations could have been one of those things. So one of the theories, and I'm kind of going off topic here for a second, but just kind of go with me. One of the theories that I have learned about, and actually I first kind of learned about it, or started kind of going down this rabbit hole a little bit in the pyramid episode. But basically, when there was the ice age, the whole world was covered in ice, but the thought is that Antarctica wasn't. That Antarctica was completely just like land, like a landmass, no ice. Well, some people believe, or it is, I don't know, it is out there that a drastic pole shift happened, which caused the Earth to melt and Antarctica to freeze. But not just that, but that it happened like in the blink of an eye. That it happened literally in a day. Not like 10 years, not 20 years, not decades, not centuries, like a day. So it caused everything to melt like quickly, and then but it also caused flash flooding, but also because of the pole shift, flash freezing over all of Antarctica. So if that theory has traction, then we can believe that Atlantis potentially was in Antarctica, and that it flash froze, so that way but it flash flooded and flash froze. So not only did it freeze, but it was buried under the water when it froze. You understand what I'm getting here? So if Atlantis is there, it could be there. It could just be buried under the ice, which is not the first time. I said this earlier, not the first time we'll hear this, nor the last, because so many people believe that there's a city, like some sort of extraterrestrial colony in Antarctica, but it's mostly under the ice now. Like you have to dig and get underneath there. But if the Ice Age theory has any traction, you see where I'm going with this? Now, of course, Atlantis is going to be frozen under the water. Like it all froze over top of it. Sorry, I had to keep my thoughts straight because none of that is in my notes. I literally just pulled that out of my brain because I do so much research into so many episodes and so many conspiracy theories. So anyway, basically, Plato explains this in his text that Atlantis was an extraterrestrial colony and was buried when Antarctica flash froze. You know what I'm saying? Is this why there are pyramids in Antarctica? Because there was an ancient civilization or an extraterrestrial colony, such as Atlantis, in Antarctica. We'll do a whole Atlantis episode as well. This is just, I know I'm just touching on it, but there's a lot that goes into Atlantis, but I had to include it in the Antarctica episode because it goes both ways. So when we do the Atlantis episode, I'll include this bit in that episode as well. We're not there yet. Right now, we're here. Yes, anyway, you heard me right. There are pyramids in Antarctica. Over the last several years, actually, pyramids have been unearthed all over the world. Prior to finding out that they were man-made, basically they were just mistaken as part of landscapes. And this happened in places such as Peru, Indonesia, even Los Angeles potentially. So, we're starting to question, why are there pyramids all over the world? On Google Earth, a pyramid, at least one, can be seen in Antarctica, and it seems very artificial. It seems man-made or extraterrestrial made? It seems not natural. It's not part of the landscape. On season 11, episode 1 of Ancient Aliens, they covered this pyramid in Antarctica. And they said it is possibly the oldest pyramid on the planet, and if that is the case, it might be the master pyramid. Meaning that the pyramids in Egypt were not the first. But man, were they not the last either. It is possible, if this is the master pyramid, all the other pyramids on Earth could be designed to look like this one, which is why we have this shape. Makes sense. But also, if this theory about the Egyptian pyramids is correct, which I just covered a few episodes ago, so if you haven't listened to that, go listen to that. It's really good. Then, what if this was a way to transmit something? be electricity or communicate with each other or communicate off the earth. Although that got me thinking too, because then I started like going down a whole different rabbit hole of like, if these pyramids are all over the world and they're all generating power, was it power on Earth or like for the Earth? Or was the Earth a power station for someone or something else? Because then if you have all these, if there are pyramids all over the world, and they brought this up in the episode as well, it would make sense that it would be like a worldwide pyramid power grid. Then in Antarctica would also have pyramids, because these pyramids would literally have to be all over the world in order to make this power grid. So why are we generating this power? And why do we need so much of this power, right? And if they can transmit the way I went over it in the Egyptian pyramid episode, and then they can communicate the way I kind of went over that with like the monoliths in that episode, the pyramid episode, were they generating power for the Earth, for their ancient civilization, for Atlantis potentially? Or was this all just a giant power grid for another planet? Are we talking the Anunnakis and Nibiru? Are we now powering Nibiru because they messed up their atmosphere and they needed us? Like, you know how they came here? If you go to the Anunnaki episode, we talked about this as well. Sorry, I'm tying in so many episodes right now. But it all makes sense. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe I'm just like crazy. That's possible too. If you go to the Anunnaki episode, right? They came here to mine precious metals so that way they could fix their atmosphere, so because they messed it up, right? Whatever, or something messed it up. It was messed up. Well, did they create or have humans create or somehow created the pyramids all over the world? Because it's really odd you'd have so many civilizations making the same shape. Like, boxes are easy. I don't know why everyone decided to go with pyramids. But I don't know. Maybe pyramids are easier. I don't know. I'm not an architect. It's just weird that you have so many civilizations making very, very similar shapes, and then that was just like a coincidence? No way. So, was the Earth a power generator for Nibiru? Potentially. But also you have these people that are like, yeah, those aren't pyramids down in Antarctica. It's just a mountain that has been basically like worn down to look like a pyramid, that like erosion over time has made it look like a pyramid. I'm here to tell you that I live in a place that has a lot of mountains. I live in Colorado, where there are the Rocky Mountains. I look out there. Yes, mountains have a tip typically, like they go up in a pyramid-like structure, but they are not perfectly sided. They're rocky and they're rough. They're none of them, and they don't have multiple sides where you can literally see a corner of it and there's two perfectly good sides on either side. Like that's not how mountains work. I don't know what these people like, where they've been, but that's not how. I've never seen a mountain work like that. So, anyway, that's episode 1. I have a second episode for you. In the second episode, we're going to go over the rest of the theories. We're basically just going to pick up right here, right where I'm leaving off. We're going to go over the rest of the theories, and we're also going to go over what Eric Hecker said in his episode with the Sean Ryan show, Sean Ryan. And because he was a whistleblower, he worked down at the Antarctic station, and he says some things about causing earthquakes and he says some pretty damning things. But he was like a firefighter down at the Antarctic station and a plumber, so he had to have access to everywhere, because a firefighter, like, you have to be able to get, if a fire breaks out, you have to be able to get in there. So he had access all over the world. He talked to a lot of people. He doesn't name names because he wants to, keep their identity a secret, which I totally respect. But we're going to get into that all next week. So thank you guys so much. This has been a really fun episode, a 2-part episode. And again, if I miss anything either this week or next week, please don't feel free to message me on Facebook, or not Facebook, on Instagram, and I will do a third part. I don't care. I'll do it. So until next week, my friends, stay skeptical, and I'll see you all then. Hey friends, The Rabbit Hole is an independent podcast with everything you hear done by me, Danny Mercy. I appreciate all of your support. Please rate and review wherever you're listening. If you want to follow us on Instagram, it's at rabbit.holepodcast. And thank you, Zakar Valaha, for our awesome intro.